Portland has far surpassed its homicide record for the year. So, with so many of these crimes unsolved, do cash rewards work?
Money might be what puts people over the edge of their waffling.
But sometimes, no.
Nobody's excited about $1,000 or $1,500 is not even enough risk.
So that fear of retaliation is real.
Yeah, it's a very real thing.
And it's a years-old problem in Portland. Where can we house the homeless? A lot of you had the same thought. What about all those big, empty box stores?
Well, some folks see big vacant properties like a Kmart, for example.
KGW took that question from viewers on the story straight to Portland city leaders.
What looks simple to the average eyeball, we have to dig in and then find out if it's legally and possible.
Here's the story.
We have gotten that question so much about one property in particular, so we'll answer it later on. I'm Maggie Vespa. Welcome to The Story, the show where clearly your feedback drives our content. So email thestory@kgw.com, use the hashtag #TheStoryKGW, send us your questions, your comments, and your weird holiday decor. It's not gone, people. We have another installment later on in the show, and it actually involves a song. You would think I'm kidding. I would never. It's amazing. For now, though, let's get to the big story. And tonight's big story focuses on Portland's record-breaking murder rate, which is mostly fueled by a huge spike in shootings. And it's something the national media is actually tracking, too, largely because in other cities, they're seeing the same spike. So let's take a look, actually, at this clip from Nightly News last night.
Among the other cities already setting records for murders this year, Portland, Tucson, Toledo, St. Paul, Austin, and Albuquerque. The debate over why is raging. Some experts blame the pandemic in part. Bail reform keeping more criminals out of jail, more guns, and fewer officers.
Now, we've absolutely, talked about some of those reasons on this show before, but tonight we want to focus on what it takes to solve these crimes, specifically cash rewards for information that leads to an arrest. Simply put, do they work? Here's investigative reporter Kyla Boshi.
You've probably heard of Crime Stoppers. It's that program that lets people share anonymous tips to help solve crimes. And if they do, there's often reward money.
Crime Stoppers offers cash rewards of up to $2,500 for information reported to Crime Stoppers that leads to an arrest in any unsolved felony crime.
Which got us wondering, with so many shootings in Portland, do cash rewards work?
Well, it's a motivator. It seems to be a motivator.
Henry Gripper is a retired Portland police officer and the guy behind Crime Stoppers of Oregon.
On Saturday, November 7, 2020, at approximately 7:33 in the evening, Portland police responding to the report of gunshots.
You're the voice of Crime Stoppers.
I have been that for a lot of years. Actually, believe it or not, I get a great satisfaction out of the Crime Stopper program because these cases that are unsolved, time moves on, but for those people that are left behind, the family members, it doesn't.
On the night of Friday, January 22nd.
Crime Stoppers of Oregon started in 1983. The local nonprofit helps publicize unsolved crimes by offering cash rewards. Over the past decade, Crime Stoppers of Oregon has solved more than 300 cases.
The media is the secret to Crime Stoppers. The more media play that's out there, the more tips we're going to get.
Often people are afraid to speak up, so Crime Stoppers allows them to remain totally anonymous by using the website or mobile app. A person is given a code number and never asked for their name, even if they collect the reward.
There is no way of tracking your email address or your cell phone number or anything like that.
But again, the question is, do these cash rewards work? To find out, I spoke with Arthur Larigio.
Hi there, how are you?
A criminal justice professor at Loyola University, Chicago, who co-authored an evaluation of Crime Stoppers in its early years.
I am one of the few researchers who received government dollars to study Crime Stoppers.
It's difficult to pinpoint how much of a factor rewards played in people calling in tips, since they're anonymous. You can't go back and ask them. But the research did find cash rewards, no matter the size, helped raise awareness and motivated some people to call.
money might be what puts people over the edge of their waffling. They want to report the information, and that may provide enough incentivizing for them to cross over.
Does the amount of the reward, whether it's $1,000 or $10,000, matter?
Our research showed that it doesn't matter. We determined that the size did not make a difference.
Recently, the FBI has also offered rewards to help solve several shootings in Portland, including $25,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the people responsible for the fatal shooting of Michaela Marie Harris. The 18-year-old was killed near a line of food carts in downtown Portland in July.
If anybody has anything to say, please just come forward.
But even with a reward and the promise of anonymity, people are often hesitant to share incriminating information.
Nobody's excited about $1,000 or $1,500. It's not even enough risk.
Lionel Irving is a gang veteran who helps steer kids away from gangs. The problem, he says, people don't want to be considered a snitch.
The community say, oh, go tell on them. See, tell them what you saw. They go in there, tell them what they saw, then they go back home. Now their house getting shot up, their kids getting beat up.
So that fear of retaliation is real.
Yeah, it's a very real thing, right? And Portland is a very small city.
And one more thing to keep in mind. Even though rewards may not solve a lot of crimes, there's real value to the community. It shows the victims haven't been forgotten. Detectives are still following up on leads. And for those who might have information, it can provide the encouragement they need to come forward and provide an anonymous tip.
Okay, KGW's Kyle Laboshi joining me now. So Kyle, I mean, a couple of questions coming out of this is super interesting. I'm wondering how Crime Stoppers decides the amount for these rewards.
So Crime Stoppers, they set the reward amount based on the severity of the crime, risk to the tipster, and some other factors. We asked the FBI that very same question. The feds, they don't have a formula to determine how much the reward will be. Instead, the FBI considers how much money it might take to generate tips and increase publicity for a case. Recently, the FBI offered $25,000 in a case. That's more than other cases. They did so because there were more victims. There were 7 victims in that particular shooting.
Wow. All right. Well, some of those rewards also, we noticed, require an arrest and a conviction to get the reward. And then some just say an arrest. Why the difference there?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the FBI requires an arrest and conviction. Crime Stoppers, on the other hand, requires just an arrest. In theory, that means the tipster, they're going to get paid faster. Often, if you wait for a conviction, that can drag on and on and on. Most murder cases, I mean, they'll take months, even years.
Yeah. All right. Interesting stuff behind the scenes there. Kyle Laboshi, thank you. From the big story now to a big question we get from our viewers all the time about our housing crisis. Frankly, it's about the city's work and at times struggle to open new shelters or organize tiny house villages and in turn get people off the streets. So Phil emailed us and said, tents are everywhere. But so are vacant big box stores. It seems to me, he said, that with minimal investment, these could be converted to housing. Dottie drilled down further. You go, Dottie. And she wrote, has anyone suggested the former Kmart location at 122nd and Sandy? It's a very large site with a huge parking area where RVs could locate. Susie suggested that same site and added people could have beds, lockers, the whole thing to take care of themselves and learn to get a job. Guys, thank you so much for writing in. And to a lot of people like those viewers, it seems really simple. We see these big empty buildings. Why don't the city and county, you think, see the same opportunity? Like, just buy them, open them up, get people in there off the streets. And look, we totally get it. And local leaders do too. I know that because for 2 days now, our team has been asking them this directly.
I mean, you guys have gotten this question too. Like, we can't be the only ones getting this question into our inbox of just, I see big empty box stores. Why can't we just house people inside those big empty buildings? Like, am I right? Have you heard this before?
Yeah, we definitely hear this question. People see buildings, they see spaces, they hope and wonder if they're going to be useful or suitable. People want to offer up solutions. They want to be part of that. And it's a really good instinct. And I don't want to discourage it. And we do think about those sites.
He said there at the end, we do think about those sites. And in fact, not only do they think about it, says Dennis Thuralt from the Joint Office of Homeless Services, but they act on it. He says they have turned empty retail sites into shelters. Case in point, our team just covered the new Arbor Lodge shelter at North Lombard in Denver. That used to be a Rite Aid. And when the Rite Aid closed, the city used CARES Act dollars and general funds to buy it. Lonnie Bear Cub Rogers is one of the men getting housing there.
I really want to set an example, and I see a couple guys in here that are doing it, and man, giving me hugs and saying, hey, Lonnie, you can do it. You know you can.
He's talking there about staying sober and staying off the streets. The city and county also did the same thing with the now Laurelwood Center. That one-time grocery store near Southeast 61st and Foster opened as a permanent shelter in 2019. But again, I know, we get it. Those kind of little guy examples, they're not the same as this giant empty Kmart at 122nd and Sandy. Like, it's huge. So why beat around the bush? Okay, a lot of you wrote in about this specific building. So let's drill down. If you look up that building on portlandmaps.com, it shows the owner is RFC Joint Venture and HFK Realty Park. We didn't know what that means either. So the owner's address is listed as the address of the Kmart. That didn't help us out much at all. So I tapped our investigative team for help. Kyle Laboshi, who you just saw, did some digging. He's a busy guy, and he found that listing traces back to a developer out of New Jersey who owns this building. We reached out to that owner to ask about the fate of this sad old Kmart. We haven't yet heard back. We'll let you know if and when we do. We also found out, though, that owner has submitted initial filings to demolish that property. So I got to say, it's not looking good. In the meantime, we also asked Laurel Porter for help on this as well. She's seen your emails about this question, and just so happens this week on Straight Talk, she's interviewing Portland Housing Commissioner Dan Ryan about his struggle to open shelters and safe rest villages in particular, or those tiny home villages that we've talked so much about. They taped that show today. It debuts tomorrow night at 7, and Laurel offered to ask the commissioner about this very idea. So here's that moment.
Why can't those vacant big box properties be used for places like safe rest villages? What can you tell folks?
I can tell folks that those usually have owners many times that don't live in Portland, and an attorney in the East Coast looks at that proposition not so kindly. And so, you know, we just are challenged with what looks simple to the average eyeball. We have to dig in and then find out if it's legally and possible, and if it fits into the pro forma of their business plan. So we're hustling the best we can to find those locations, and anyone out there that's connected to Peoples for Portland that does have 2 acres of flat surface that we can quickly build a village on, we're all in. We're here to work with you. Just give us a call.
Commissioner Ryan talking to that campaign there. In other words, the commissioner said, not every owner wants to sell their properties to be used as a shelter, and they obviously don't have to. That being said, some who are willing want more than the city and county can pay. So in the case of that abandoned Kmart, let's go back to Portland Maps. The market value you can see there is listed at $5.9 million. That's before any renovations that officials say it may very well need. The Rite Aid, by comparison, was purchased for less than half of that. Both the joint office and Commissioner Ryan said in particular they have looked into that Kmart property, and it's just not feasible. So sorry, former Kmart shoppers, they say, but they add, thank you for the idea.
Portland is still trying to figure out how to get body cameras on police, and it looks like it's still going to take a while. In the meantime, in Vancouver,
as soon as I remove the gun from the holster, it kicks on, and it'll kick on 15 seconds prior and document that.
Their body camera program is up and running. When the story continues.
Our segment on emails about box stores is producing more emails about other sites that could be used as shelters and villages. So keep them coming. We really love reading your questions and your comments, and you can send them into the story at kgw.com or use that hashtag, the story KGW, on Twitter. Speaking of, let's get to this email from Kate. She wrote, If hundreds of police departments around the country are already using body cams, why is Portland having so much trouble implementing them? Why can't we just follow their examples that apparently are working successfully? Kate, great question. Thank you so much. We have talked about this before. The City Council, just to recap, finally approved the funding for body cameras last month. But the holdup is contract negotiations between the city and the police union. They are debating several things right now, including who gets to see that video and when. For instance, can officers watch the video before writing their reports? Also, the feds are involved thanks to a 2014 settlement over police reform, so it's complicated, to say the least. However, if Portland needs yet another example to follow, officials can now look at what Vancouver is doing, because some officers there started wearing body cameras this week. Here's Catherine Cook.
It's day one, so we're figuring it out.
For the next 60 days, Nicole Vigil and 9 other Vancouver police officers will be part of a pilot program to test out these body cameras.
We took the top scoring vendor and said, we'll try this product.
So this is the Rocket IoT.
6 patrol cars will also be equipped with cameras, front and back, from the same vendor, which is paying for the trial.
I know that the community wants it. Most agencies are having it. We knew it was up and coming. And I like the idea of the transparency around it.
Vancouver police have been moving toward body cameras since 2019. That year, Vancouver police officers shot 4 people, killing 3 of them. The Clark County Prosecuting Attorney's Office ruled all 4 shootings justified. Still, those incidents prompted community members to ask the department to consider adopting a police camera program. Washington lawmakers secured funding to get it off the ground. Assistant Chief Troy Price.
Again, the goal is ultimately to give as much transparency into what we're doing and how we're doing it, and to make sure it meets our community's expectations.
The cameras are always on a 15-second loop. That means every 15 seconds the video is deleted unless the officer hits record.
I could just push this middle button and it'll start recording.
The cameras are also designed to automatically start recording in certain situations. Examples include when an officer turns on their lights, when they get out of their patrol car, start running, or draw their gun.
That way we don't have to think about it at all. As soon as I remove the gun from the holster, it kicks on, and it'll kick on 15 seconds prior and document that.
If the trial runs smoothly, the department expects to equip every officer and patrol car with cameras by late spring 2022. So let's talk about cost. The Vancouver Police Department has secured $3 million in federal funding for this program, and they expect it to cost about $1.2 million a year. They'll have a better idea after this trial. The next 60 days will not only show them how the equipment will work, but how much video they expect to collect, and in turn, how many people they'll need to hire to process and store that video. They say that will be their biggest expense. In Vancouver, Catherine Cook, KGW News.
So still ahead, experts were clear. All those earthquakes, the 50 plus that we had off the coast yesterday, those are not a sign that the big one is coming, but it might have you thinking about the big one. The thing is, when that big one hits, our shake alert system might not work like it's supposed to. We'll explain why when the story continues. Hey, welcome back, everybody. So we've been talking a lot about earthquakes this week after more than 50 hit the same area in a 24-hour period. That'll definitely put that in the conversation. This is called the Blanco fracture zone, where quakes are pretty common. In fact, geologists say this swarm is not out of the ordinary or anything to be worried about. Most importantly, it is not, they say, a precursor to the big one. But it's still a good reminder to be ready for whenever the big one hits. And one of the things you can do to prepare is make sure that you have Shake Alert enabled on your phone. Shake Alert is the earthquake early warning system for Oregon and Washington, and it's supposed to give you a heads up several seconds before the shaking starts so you can take cover. But some researchers in Washington found out it may not actually alert everyone in the Pacific Northwest when a Cascadia subduction zone quake hits. Here's Glenn Farley from our sister station in Seattle.
Earthquake, earthquake.
It's been in development for years. Shake Alert, a system to warn us how many seconds we have
after an earthquake starts and before the shaking arrives where we are. In this test scenario, the quake is right off the Washington coast, and it's a big one.
So what I'm showing here is actually how the ground shaking will propagate across our region.
But what if the earthquake starts off the coast of southern Oregon? Renata Hartog helps manage the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network that monitors for earthquakes in Washington and Oregon. And along with one of her graduate students finds that if the quake starts far away, we may not get a warning in Tacoma and Seattle that the shaking is coming.
Because this rupture takes so long to evolve, the system doesn't recognize that it's a really large earthquake soon enough to actually give a warning to Seattle.
Here's part of the problem. The fault we're talking about, called the Cascadia Subduction Zone, runs for hundreds of miles from far northern California, past Oregon, Washington, and much of British Columbia. It happens because a plate of crust making up the ocean floor is being forced under the Pacific Northwest. And the quake just doesn't happen in one place. It's an entire fault that could take around 5 minutes to rip open, like tearing a sheet. That's different than in most of California, where the shake alert system was originally developed. That's not subject to the same level of enormous risk. While Southern California and the Bay Area have seen big quakes, there are far, far more that are small and more annoying than damaging.
We could make some pragmatic decisions on how to change the alerting strategy, to make that limitation go away.
That was Glenn Farley reporting. Keep sending in those questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We're going to finish the show with that weird holiday decor. Take a look at the weirdness on your screen, because we're going to wrap things up with oh, look, it's flying toward us, with more of your weird holiday decor. This one comes from Clark, who wanted you to meet his family's cockatiel. What does it do, you ask? Well, this is a quote. I did not write this. Clark says it, quote, poops nougat for children in Catalonia. Don't believe him? There's a song about it.
Arrancadas que són salades, cagaturrons que són més bons.
Wasn't that fantastic? Clark, we actually think that this is less weird and more just like adorable and really cool. And we appreciate you sharing cockatiel with us before you and your family beat him senseless, demanding candy and gifts. Don't you just love the holidays, people? It's just heartwarming and at times violent, but cute, right? Weird combination. I love it. All right, pick up your phone and follow us on Twitter at @TheStoryKGW, or email questions, comments, and weird holiday decor. We're going to have more tomorrow to thestory@kgw.com. That was weird, and that was the end of this show. The news at 6:30 starts now.